Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm going to be walking you through this speed painting. So, first thing I did was set up a basic perspective grid. Now I'm just scribbling and looking for shapes. And I was kind of thinking, because I have no idea what the scribbles are going to turn into or what I'm going to find in them. So I was kind of hoping I would find some environment, but nope. I ended up seeing a figure, so I decided to go that way. And for me, it's been something that I guess I've trained myself to do, which is to, at times, like this doesn't work for, illustration that you're doing for clients, but just to let my subconscious take over and not get in its way. So now I'm putting in some dark values, figuring out where the light's coming from, where the shadows are going to be. Everything's still pretty loose, but I'd say at this point I kind of have an idea of where I want to head with this one. I want to have, some girl on a bed and have some light that's interesting going on. So the way I got that kind of intense light is I switched from a normal brush to a brush I think set to overlay, and the brush I'm using though, at first it was my sketching brush, and there's a video I have like how I sketch poses or something, and that goes over all the settings for that brush, but then I just switched to a default hard round brush. And the reason I like using the hard round over other brushes is just because it seems to blend very easily, and also when I put down a tone, it pretty much is that. It doesn't have texture to it that could confuse things. So I really know what I'm getting when I use it. So still playing around with values and shapes, and I'm keeping everything really loose. Actually, personally, I really like loose paintings. I like things where you can kind of tell what's going on, but it leaves a bit up to your imagination. I like seeing brush strokes, and I don't actually like hyperreal stuff or extremely detailed or rendered stuff as much. So one of the most important things when you're spreading out your values, I think, is to have areas of contrast. Like you can see in her like armpit area, there's a dark underneath her waist. There's a bit of a dark. Like having those darks in places just to give you a greater value range is really important. So I'm not using a palette or anything. I'm just kind of, guessing. I have the Len White color wheel, and that's what I'm using to get my colors. And the link to that's available on my site, www.sycra.net. If you go in the resources section, there's a link to Len White color wheel, but it really doesn't matter. Because the color wheel itself isn't picking anything for you. It's not choosing the colors. It's just, convenient to switch things. So I'm really thinking about atmosphere and getting that, almost too bright look, where all the lights are a bit blown out. And I'm thinking in terms of planes and materials. So one of the hardest things is just keeping the values accurate, getting the planes right. There's a lot of heavy-duty thinking that goes on and stuff like that. So with her face, for instance, it has to be in the shadow, so when you squint your eyes, it shouldn't actually be light, but there's sort of the tendency to go to light because you think of it as, skin, light skin with maybe darker hair, and then you feel like, well, okay, so because of that, I should go much lighter without perhaps remembering that, well, no, this is an area in the shadow. There shouldn't be that much contrast. So I popped in a dark behind her head to really push it forward. It also creates more of a focal point, more of an interest. And I would say this is a bit of an unconventional composition just because the focal point is pushed so far to the left. Well, it's the left right now. I tend to flip my image a lot, and that's just because I want to check. I want to get a new perspective on things. I want to make sure, I'm not seeing the same mistakes over and over and getting used to seeing them. What I did back there was I used the lasso tool just to get a bit of a harder edge because I wanted an edge between, the wall, so it looks like the wall's going in one direction, then it turns. I've started using the lasso tool more. I think for this one, I just used that once for that mark, but I'm starting to get into it. I like how it gives you some crisp edges, and that works well, especially when paired against things that are more soft and loose. So you just get a variety of edges. So this is actually sped up quite a bit. I think it's about 5 times. The actual painting took 65 minutes in total. So I don't really paint this fast. And see here with that flower pot thing, I knew I wanted the pot, I guess, and the trunk of the plant to be dark. So I actually sculpted into it with the background color, and that's just as good as, drawing the thing itself. Sometimes you can use the background to actually carve into what you want to draw. So here I'm just experimenting a bit with adding in some background or people in that doorway, maybe a structure to give a sense of the architecture. But it's not that important, so I'm not, paying attention to it. And I really don't mind if no one even sees that, because that's really not, the key thing. Added a sun, and I figured it was lacking something, so I wanted to add a cat rubbing its head against the person. And the reason for that is I was just walking the other day, and some cat came up to me and started doing that, like rubbing its head on my leg, and it's like, and its tail was really straight up, and I don't know, I'm sure it's probably something cats do all the time. I've never, owned a cat, and I'm not too familiar with them, so anyway, yeah, so I just wanted to do that. And I put down like an orangish tone for the body, but I kind of had the idea that I would turn it, I would make the body white, actually. I just wanted to have a tone that when I put the white on top, it kind of blends. And I like working that way, where you have the shadow tone and then you build the light on top of it, rather than you have the light tone, or you have the light tone, and then you add the shadow. I mean, it doesn't really make a huge difference, but I like working the other way. It's something you can't really do with watercolor, where you have the shadow and then you add the light, but it's something that, with acrylics or with oil paint, or of course with digital, it's not an issue at all. You can just do things in whatever order you want. So I figure she's, texting on her cell phone. She's not really interested in what's going on around her. The cat kind of wants attention. And because she's looking at a cell phone, it's giving some light off. So I figure, I can do some interesting underlighting on her face, especially because her face is in the shadow. And that will just give me an opportunity to, have some variety in the lighting. Now the cat's tail, I'm not sure compositionally how well it works because it's right beside the straight of that the door frame, but it doesn't bother me too much. And again, I just wanted to get that straight up cattail thing because the cat that I met did that. Its tail was extremely straight. So I'm trying to sculpt the forms and use the shadows and use cool light in opposition to the warm light. So the further left you go, the more cools are in the image. I figured the cell phone light is going to be a cool light. And by cool, I just mean it's closer to the blue or purple tones or green tones. Warm is generally closer to yellows, oranges, and reds. So when I'm doing this, I also start to think of an artist I really like, a Chinese artist called Benjamin, and he does images that are similar to this, but he goes really crazy with color, and I just think it's awesome. I really wish someday I'll be able to use color the way he does. And I try to, push the color as much as I can. So I like images also, like not just loose in terms of the painting, but I like images that they're not so defined in terms of the story either. And I like having the hint of a story. Like, something's going on. People are thinking. But then about what is sort of left up to you. I just like to keep things more open. And I don't know what this person's, looking at either. I mean, she could be playing games or having a conversation, and it could be intense. I don't know. So I'm just adding, darks, cleaning things up a little bit. Not in terms of, rendering it out, but just making sure the darks are where they need to be, the lights are where they need to be, that, tones are blended. And I think it's coming up to the end, so I just added a purple to pop her head forward, and that's it. So thanks for watching.